And now I'll go into some of the key areas that the guide looks at in detail. So first, the guide recommends that in sitting down to assess your national legislation and your regulatory framework, that you look at the global context for air quality standards. So whether they are international legal obligations or regional obligations impacting air quality governance that apply to the country. And the reason why we focus so much on the WHO air quality guidelines is because it really remains the single authoritative global reference for synthesizing evidence underpinning a need for ambient air quality standards, especially in the absence of any kind of global treaty on ambient air quality. So the WHO was very successful in looking at and evaluating the evidence of the effects of air pollution from the perspective of public health and the potential to avoid harms. So the air quality guidelines, although they're not, they don't have blanket application in their entirety to every country in the world, really provide a well-evidenced starting point to nationally evaluate ambient air quality standards that take into consideration national environmental and social conditions. They provide at least a lower limit, where under that it's very unlikely that any health benefits would occur. So the idea is not to champion all of the WHO air quality standards to all countries, but really to have it as a baseline or a sort of a gold standard in terms of how to look at air quality. So some of the things that we encourage countries to look at when assessing their national frameworks is what should be the purpose of an air quality legal framework to begin with. It sounds like a simple question, but looking at what the objectives of an air quality law are as they are embedded in the law can inform the ambition and focus of the regulatory attention. So a contemporary legislative regime for air quality should pursue the purpose of achieving clean air for public health. And then we also go into some sort of technical details like whether the objective is in primary or secondary legislation and the implications of having it in different parts of the legislation and so on, so that countries can really consider and understand also the weight, I suppose, and the importance of these kinds of decisions. What is the scope of air quality legislation, and does it include air pollution, indoor air pollution? And we really advocate and recommend that air quality, or that the focus is on air quality as opposed to pollution. This is consistent with the objective of promoting good health and not necessarily controlling emissions per se. How are stakeholders included in the process? So some air quality legal frameworks might prescribe a public participation process to adopt ambient air quality standards, and some may allow in detail for meaningful participation for any relevant or interested party to be informed of the opportunity to participate. And then what pollutants should ambient air quality standards regulate within their air quality regime? In answering that question, we encourage countries also to look at the air pollutants or the chemical climate within their own countries to understand which standards would have the greatest significance to them. So really guidance that is adaptable to each country context. We also look at in the guide the issue of setting legislative quality standards for ambient air and establishing administrative frameworks. So again, we look at and answer the question of whether ambient air quality standards should be based on WHO guideline values. And by doing that, we really just focus on the importance and the relevance of WHO guidelines without advocating for a whole-scale application of all guidelines across all countries, and advocate that they might be it might be useful to implement sort of staging posts in setting ambient air quality standards to enable sort of a stepped approach to achieving ambient air quality standards over time. And that goes towards Astrid and others' comments about being able to establish mechanisms to enable regular review or periodic review of ambient air quality standards over time. I think when we think about legislating for air quality, we often just think about ambient air quality standards and establishing those. But I think by going into these kinds of details, the point I'm trying to make is that having successful legislative frameworks for air quality also requires that we establish administrative frameworks, for example, that enable review of legislative schemes regularly according to the data available with stakeholder input, that we establish monitoring mechanisms to observe air quality in different locations, that we establish provisions to handle uncertainties, emergency exceedances, and how and whether these legal requirements will be imposed on the state itself. We also advocate for establishing mechanisms to ensure that the integrity of data is robust in terms of accuracy and quality, so that it can act as the basis of legal challenge, and also emphasizing that public confidence in data is very important, and measurements should be open to public scrutiny and deliver data that transparently meets predefined data quality standards. Looking at compliance enforcement mechanisms, and at the Montevideo program, we're often requested to review draft legislation from countries on air quality, and it sounds I don't know, maybe very basic, but compliance and enforcement measures are often an area of legislation that is just omitted. I mean, there may be many reasons for that, but I think that it's maybe often perhaps an afterthought as well, what mechanisms are in place to ensure compliance and enforcement. And the point here is that if reliable data demonstrates that ambient air quality standards are not being met, there should be legal consequences for the breach of the law. The nature and the form of those consequences will depend on how legal breaches are resolved within specific legal cultures, but they will also depend on how those legal consequences are defined within air quality legislation. So laws should be explicit on this. It should be established how state responsibility is articulated, and whether there are binding obligations on governments to achieve air quality standards, as this can facilitate strong legal enforcement by the courts. So these might be obligations that require administrative planning processes to be set in motion to develop detailed actions if ambient air quality standards aren't being met, and mechanisms to hold responsible entities to account through other means, such as through transparency to the public and so on. And just to say that also, compliance and enforcement may not necessarily always mean the imposition of fines, but can mean there should be a range or a scope of enforcement mechanisms that aim to create a culture of compliance as well. So I'm just coming to the end soon.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
I was just
Finishing
reminding
up,
you of the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, almost there. I guess I wouldn't go into this too much, because I did mention it a bit, that legislative frameworks are important in ensuring coordination between governments. These are not elements that should be left up to time and sort of practice. They should be embedded into international laws, and of course they should be gender sensitive and consider vulnerable populations, women, children, and so on. And I think the last thing that I wanted to mention is on transboundary air pollution, because this is often an area considered to be within the realm of sort of international law or regional law or agreement. And actually, national legal provisions for transboundary air pollution should be accounted for in law. The structure in the law should set out levels of ambition and processes for enforcement and accountability. And this has a benefit, of course, of establishing legal certainty for economic operators. But just to show you one of the statistics that we can take away from the global assessment that we did, was that 63% of countries around the world have no legal provisions, so at the level of national laws, on transboundary air pollution. 31% of countries that did did have mechanisms. Of those, 66% were parties to the UNECE Convention on long-range transboundary air pollution. Obviously indicating that where there is a regional agreement, there has been a greater likelihood that these countries do establish national provisions that integrate transboundary air pollution. And so legal cooperation is required, so international regional cooperation is required for well-designed control of transboundary air pollution, but national air quality provisions should also consider pollution originating from within national borders and those also impacting from outside the national borders. So it involves agreement between countries to coordinate efforts to monitoring, data sharing, consultation, and early warning, and so on. But and of course, unilateral action alone is unlikely to be effective. But countries do need to integrate these considerations into national law. And I would just mention that the Montevideo program supports countries, as Georgie mentioned in her opening remarks, to review and design national laws that are robust and in line with good practices. And with that, I'll leave it there, and please feel free to get the guide online and have a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's a good transition to the next speaker. In a time where rules-based order appears to be fading and power rivalry is taking over, it's more important than ever to support international law and international human rights law in particular. And the next speaker, Vindhya Arini, will be talking about state obligations on air pollution to support fulfillment of the right to clean, healthy, and sustainable environments. Please, Vindhya.
Hi, good morning, I think. My name is Vindhya Arini, I'm Indonesian. I'm the new Regional Director for Asia and the Pacific for Raoul Wallenberg Institute. This one is actually my predecessor, so thank you, Georgie, for bringing us together. So I will be talking about state responsibilities from the rights-based angle. But first of all, I don't know how many of you know about our organization. So Raoul Wallenberg Institute is an independent academic institution based in Lund in Sweden, in south of Sweden. And we have been operating for about 41 years. And one of the thematic areas that we have been focusing on is human rights and environment, which is one of or the biggest thematic issue that we have been operating here in this region since 2017. And we have been successful enough in implementing series of activities and programs with national and regional governments and institutions, as well as local governments in the city level, and also, of course, with our partners at the UN, including UNEP. So next slide. So I want to tell the tale of two cities, Bangkok and Jakarta. And in the past 3 days here, Bangkok and Jakarta has been used as the two big case studies. But these two cities are very close to my heart. I'm a born and raised Jakartan, and I come to Bangkok way too many times for work, so I consider this city as another home of me. And I think both cities have similar challenges. When I drafted this presentation 2 weeks ago, both cities have very high PM 2.5 level, although Bangkok is a little bit higher than Jakarta, I have to say. But I think both cities also experience or have similar sources of pollution, maybe more so for Bangkok on agricultural burning, but for Jakarta is largely industrial traffic, coal influence, and I think both cities have implemented different methodologies and approaches in addressing this urgent issue. But for example, like Bangkok, in earlier this year, there was school closure, emergency responses from BMAs. But for Jakarta, one of the main one of the main efforts from the public is the air pollution litigation brought by the public. We won the case, the public won the case, but as mentioned previously by the previous speaker, I think enforcement is one of the main challenges in terms of court judgment on air pollution for our case, and I think that's about similar for the PM 2.5 case in Chiang Mai. That's one of the points that we have been consistently discussing with judges around the region, that yes, they can issue a judgment that in favor of the public and instructing national or local governments to do something about this. But at the end of the day, enforcement is beyond the court's mandate, so to speak. Next, please. So based on that urban crisis, it creates, in my opinion, it creates legal obligations. So air pollution is not an accident, it's not a misfortune that brings about by the weather and whatnot. So when hazardous air quality becomes recurrent, so it happens every year, and it's in most of the time, especially for Bangkok, it's around the same time every year. It is measurable. It's clear to different monitoring system of the PM 2.5 data, and scientifically established that if there is a direct link to respiratory failure and death, it loses the status of unpredictable event because it is predictable. So then it becomes a foreseeable harm. In cities like Bangkok and Jakarta, the level of air pollution is not it's not a surprise anymore. It happens almost daily, and the data has turned this risk into a known danger. So this then shifts the role of the state from observation to active protection. So this, what it means is that in terms of regulation, I think as mentioned by the previous speakers as well, that states are mandated to prevent exposure before it happens. Both public and private emission sources, from the state-owned coal plants to private agricultural giants, must be strictly regulated. And when monitor hits red level, the corrective action must be immediate. I don't think states and local government needs to be bogged down into, different committees and whatnot. It has to be quick and agile. And for national air quality actors specifically, this means that this is an overhaul of how they see their role. So clean air is shifting from a policy aspiration, something that we hope to achieve, to something that enforceable governance duty. Next. So this is the map, a simple map of state responsibilities in air pollution governance. So as mentioned by Astrid earlier, under the right to healthy environment, clear is one of the substantive rights, and where air pollution is again predictable, measurable, and linked to health harms or health issues, state must take all reasonable and necessary measures to prevent this foreseeable harm. So in the context of air pollution, this responsibilities operates across 3 different dimensions. So one is to prevent, which is the substantive obligation of states. So state must align their national air quality standards with the best available scientific evidence, as again mentioned by the previous speaker. And this is not only having a standard that look nice on paper, but ensuring that they are health-based and regularly updated, because things change quite rapidly these days. And prevention also requires regulating major emission sources, and I think BMA example is one of a good ones, that they identify what are the sources first and then react. So some of the sources are transport, industry, and energy, and enforcing compliance effectively, including corporate accountability. I think this is one of the hard part of this task of the government. But this includes ensuring that environmental impact assessment, which I hope colleague from the Ministry of Environment of Indonesia will speak a little bit about this, could meaningfully evaluate cumulative air pollution impacts before permits are granted, rather than treating air quality as a secondary consideration. And importantly, when standards are exceeded, corrective action must then follow. Because persistent exceedances then raise questions and raise alarm from the public about whether due diligence is actually being fulfilled. Second is the enabling area, which is the procedural and accountability dimension. This is a little bit more what RWO has been a lot doing in this region. So clean air governance must be transparent and participatory, again mentioned by the previous speaker. So this means real-time accessible public air quality data, so communities and people understand their exposure, and it means meaningful participation in air quality planning and permitting processes. Participation must extend to EIA, where communities can scrutinize projected air emission and challenges in adequate mitigation measures. And it means access also to effective remedies. Individuals and communities must have legal standing, a little bit more relaxed legal standing, and practical avenues to challenge regulatory inaction or limited enforcement. And this region has differing ways of regulating standings for communities, but at least in some countries we do have a little bit more relaxed standing, as in the case of Indonesia. Transparency without accountability is insufficient, so procedural rights ensure that environmental governance is not only technocratic but it's responsive. And third is to protect equally. So this is the non-discrimination dimension of this state of responsibility, because air pollution does not affect everyone equally. I live in Jakarta, rather privileged. I work in an aircon room with air purifier, so it's the taxi that I'm on. But others who take public transport, the unhoused, the outdoors worker does not have the same privilege as me. And good thing that I'm in a perfectly air-conditioned room, because I have asthma, and when I go out to the air and breathe the Jakarta air, then it increases my risk of health issues. So therefore, a heightened obligation to identify pollution hotspots, prioritize vulnerable population, prevent disproportionate exposure, and protect environmental human rights defenders that actually raise this issue to the state, in some cases through courts and national human rights institutions as well, does not face with reprisals when they spoke out against this inaction. So taken together, so these are broadly the state responsibilities. I've been informed that my time is up, but just a very quick slide on ASEAN, because Georgie and I have been supporting each other on this ASEAN Declaration on Environmental Rights. I believe this is a very good first step for marrying the two traditionally very siloed areas of governance in Southeast Asia, human rights and environment. I mean, human rights have been sidelined for so many other issues, but with environment is one of the examples. So this declaration could hopefully breaking those institutional silos, not only at the regional level within ASEAN, but also down at the national level, because that's also seems to be the similar case. This is of course not a binding document, but it can be used as a reference for policy making, for litigation. So we have been promoting through different stakeholders to use this declaration, because this declaration is only as powerful if it's being used. So, and I hope it's being used, and I think it is being used. And for national air quality actors, I think this declaration affirms, at least at the regional level, that environmental protection is a right obligation, not merely a technical policy choice. And what's again another important point about this declaration is actually it promotes peer learning between countries in the region, and I hope this would be one trigger to do that more from the rights-based angle than very technical that has been the case. And I want to mention that if this declaration is being used at the national level for a national air quality plan or whatnot, I think this would be a very good starting point. And on that note, we also would like to share that this city that we are gathering together, they have declared their commitment to become a human rights city last year. And I think that is another very good example from BMA to strengthen their commitment on human rights, and hopefully that commitment could permeate even further into one of them is air quality plan that BMA is currently cooking up. And that is it from me. Thank you for listening, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Wendy. So those were the two speakers on the normative frameworks, legislation, and I now look forward to hearing more about the solutions. How are these legal obligations implemented? And then it's very fitting also that the first speaker is now Pak Jansen from Jakarta, which is now recognized by the UN as the world's largest city under the new geographical measurement procedures. Mr. Johnson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Ahmad. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I really enjoy discussing about air pollution in this place. Please help me to run the slide. Yeah. The Jabodetabek Metropolitan are represent the large urban agglomeration in Indonesia, encompassing Jakarta, Bogor, Depok, Tangerang City, South Tangerang City, Tangerang Regency, Bekasi City, and Bekasi Regency, with an estimate population exceeding 30 million inhabitants across approximately 6,400 square kilometers. Is constitutes one of Southeast Asia's most densely populated urban region. The excessive diversity of function of Jakarta and its satellite city has led to serious air pollution. These satellite cities have grown like sprawling village, not as a part of a planned city, as the national administrative, financial center, major industrial, residential, educational hubs. The intense intercity mobility of millions of daily commuters has created a highly interconnected socio-economic system. However, this integration also results in transboundary environmental impacts, particularly in the form of air pollution, which transcend administrative boundaries and would otherwise require coordinated metropolitan governance. Slide 2. Pollution data and parameter air quality monitoring, which in Jabodetabek consistently identify particulate matter, particularly PM2.5, as a primary pollutant of concern. Additional pollutant include PM10, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and ground level ozone. The principal emission source include transportation, coal-fired power generation, industrial activities, and regional atmospheric transport. Seasonal meteorological condition further exacerbated pollution concentration. This finding underscore the systemic and transboundary nature of the challenge. This is the data air quality index. In many places have 55 unhealthy in the 2025. While in others, the 10 days due to returning the village for 8 RP3. Maybe could total more than 55 unhealthy days. Next. The public right to clean air must be fulfilled. There are health risks, potential intellectual decline, financial loss, and even potential death. The issue of clean air must be framed within human rights context. Article 28 H, paragraph 1 of the Constitution of Republic of Indonesia guarantees every person the right to good, the healthy environment. This constitutional provision aligns with the UN General Assembly's recognition of the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as a universal human right. Thus, environmental governance is intrinsically linked to constitutional and human rights obligation. Next. Indonesia has undertaken several national initiatives to address air pollution and energy transition. The Household Energy Conversion Program, replacing kerosene with liquefied petroleum gas, significantly reduces indoor air pollution and improve fuel efficiency. In the transport sector, the development of the bus rapid transit system alongside the introduction of compressed natural gas, CNG, and electric buses reflect a strategic shift toward cleaner mobility. Complementary investment in MRT, LRT infrastructure further aim to reduce private vehicle dependence. At the national level, renewable energy target and the development of carbon market mechanisms signal an ongoing structural transition. While progress has been achieved in dense metropolitan coordination remain imperative. Next. This is future of that. Next. Yeah. Transboundary governance challenge. Air pollution within Jabodetabek is inherently transboundary. Emission originating in industrial zones and power plant outside Jakarta contribute significantly to air quality degradation within the capital. Likewise, daily commuting person generate regional emission flows. However, administrative fragmentation present governance challenge. Multiple local jurisdiction exercise authority over different emission sources, often resulting in policy inconsistency. Therefore, effective national measures should include, number one, an integrated metropolitan air quality management framework. Number two, harmonized emission standard. Number three, a coordinated monitoring system. Number four, providing the public with easy access to real-time information on air quality. This is the human right, yeah? Providing the public with easy access to real-time information on air quality. Number five, strengthen enforcement mechanism. In 2025, 11 industrial entities were temporarily suspended or given heavy administrative sanction for causing serious pollution in Greater Jakarta. 7 of these were still companies that relocate from countries seeking clean air, but whose pollution was transferred to other countries. Regional collaboration is essential to address pollution that doesn't respect jurisdictional border. Next. Conclusion and unit alignment. In conclusion, addressing transboundary air pollution in Jabodetabek requires comprehensive and coordinated national action aligned with UNEP principle. Such action must be integrated: energy transition acceleration, sustainable urban mobility, legal enforcement, human rights protection, and public participation. Clean air is not merely an environmental objective? Is it public health necessity, an economic imperative, and a human rights obligation? Indonesia continue commitment to effective national measures will contribute not only to metropolitan sustainability but also to broader regional environmental cooperation with Asia. In fact, this already began to be done and will continue to be improved. Tightening the feasibility study of industry requirement from environmental factor and health impact is an act of respecting community rights. Enforcing the law is also an effort to respect human rights, and the right to receive information about air quality at any time is also a human right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Two very important issues there. One is to realize that air quality management is human rights implementation, and the second one, as a transfer to the next speaker on regional cooperation, it was you talked about the challenges of administrative borders within a country and transboundary air pollution in that sense. The next speaker is Patrick Bucher from GIZ, who will be talking more of a regional cooperation within an ASEAN context.
Many thanks. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting us. Thanks a lot again. So yes, I think this is a very good follow-up to what we just heard. Very interesting to hear from Indonesia. So why am I talking about this? This is because we are just about to start with a new regional project. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail later on. But it is an ASEAN project, and the governance on different levels and regional approaches to air quality management are at the core of this project. So next slide, please. So what are the challenges we see, right? The main air quality challenges you probably know this, and I'm talking here especially about transboundary challenges, are really the transboundary haze and urban PM2.5. Transboundary haze does have as well a PM2.5 part to it. There is as well ozone, but basically we've seen over the last decades an increase of transboundary haze in the ASEAN region. The sources we know as well, there are from different sectors. If we're talking about, and this new project will focus mainly on rural areas and not so much urban areas. So if we're really talking about the transboundary haze, you can see now often during the earlier parts of the year, the drier months, then this haze is to a large extent coming from open burning, from agriculture, forestry, and the waste sector. And the impacts, we've heard about impacts already, so deteriorating public health, declining agricultural yields, economic costs increase, accelerating climate change, and as well geopolitical tension. So we've seen it during the last years that countries blame their neighboring countries and that they're being polluted by them. And we see the same actually within countries as well. We know that, for example, BMA, the Bangkok Metropolitan Administration, they are increasingly aware of the pollution that is coming from outside of Bangkok into Bangkok. And they are, I would probably say, they're not so much blaming then these provinces, mainly to the northeast of Bangkok, but they're trying to really work together with them to find a solution. It's a transboundary challenge, and we need multi-level governance solutions with regional, national, and sub-national governance structures. And I think this is really the core of the problem and the core of the solution as well. I would say that we need good multi-level governance, both vertically and as well horizontally. Next slide, please. So what is the governance, I call it the governance dilemma, so shared air, divided authority. So I just said emissions are often local or national, and the impacts are often seen much wider, much more wide, often regional. We have a regulation split between ASEAN frameworks, coordinating, for example, the Hays Agreement, national laws, legislation, and subnational authorities, which implement the laws and as well as solutions or activities to improve air quality. And the risk really is that the vertical governance fragmentation is happening, and we have hence a policy incoherence. And I would argue the challenge is, and I think we've heard that earlier actually today, challenges is not the absence of rules, but the insufficient coordination across levels. Next slide, please. So how does the multi-level governance architecture look like in this region? So on the regional level, we have the ASEAN, ASEAN level, we have at that level, we have policy dialogues, we have regional agreements, like for example, the ASEAN Agreement on Transboundary Haze Pollution. We have a knowledge and data exchange, at least to a certain extent, I would argue. I think the data exchange is still an issue, so we need to see an improvement on that one. And we have as well a coordination of agreements, treaties, declarations. We just heard about the new declaration from last year about the right or declaration for a healthy environment. At the national level, we have environmental standards, enforcement mechanisms, and sectoral regulation, for example, for transport, energy, but as well agriculture. And at the subnational level, we have urban transport planning, as just an example, industrial permitting, monitoring local enforcement, and capacity of differences. And there we often have the differences specifically between often the mega cities or the capitals and rural provinces. We can see that in most ASEAN countries actually. Next slide, please. So, challenges here. One is really the weak vertical alignment, which is an issue. Then we have a funding mismatch. We heard a lot about funding in the last days already between the national and local level. And we have implementation gaps at the subnational level. Next slide, please. So what are the key coordination challenges? Because I said, right, coordination is key to solving the problem of multi-level governance. So what are the main challenges? I just mentioned it, vertical fragmentation. So we have weak compliance at the regional level. We have inconsistent national implementation. And you could argue this is partly as well due to the weak compliance at regional level. And we have limited upward reporting as well from local authorities. And I think the structure is there within ASEAN to actually do this reporting, and I think it has improved over the last years, but it's still a challenge. We have technical and capacity gaps. You know, the monitoring standards still differ between ASEAN countries. We have data comparability issues, exactly because as well we have monitoring standards or differences in standards, and as well obviously in using as well different instruments, for example, and we have an uneven subnational expertise. And I think we've seen this a lot as well in most ASEAN countries, that capacity building obviously is a rather important point here that has to be addressed. And we have horizontal policy silos as well, you know, environment versus transport and versus agriculture, for example. We heard that as well a lot during the last days, that ministries are not working together. This is not an ASEAN problem, you know. I can tell you that we have exactly the same problem in Germany as well. So it is, it's an issue that the ministries are not working together, and this is really something we have to look into. And often air policy is disconnected from climate and health policies as well. And I think, again, we've heard during the last days that we should really look into framing or developing better narratives that actually, you know, look at or let's say integrated approaches to air quality, and we should, to do that, we should much better link air policy, air pollution policy to climate and health policies as well in terms of funding, you know, to attract better funding. So governance failure is often a coordination failure, I would say. So next slide, please. So what are the solutions, right? I think they are quite clear, and we know them as well. And I guess it's sometimes a little bit a matter of lack of political will as well, but it's not so much, I would say. So I think in principle, we get the impression that across ASEAN there is a real interest in improving air quality, and there are certain solutions we would like to bring across as well within our new project, and we are discussing them already now with the ASEAN Secretariat and as well with all ASEAN member states. So strengthening vertical coordination is a rather important one. We need a clearer allocation there of competences, we believe. We need a better ASEAN level review mechanism, especially in terms of well, policies, but as well data, for example, and action. We need improved national local funding alignment, which is a problem I mentioned earlier, and mandatory reporting and transparency frameworks. They are there. Mostly they can still be improved, but I think the reporting as well is still an issue from time to time. We need to enhance technical cooperation and knowledge sharing. For example, using standardized monitoring protocols, shared modeling tools, and we have some very good higher education institutes here in the region, universities, excellent universities that do an excellent modeling job, for example. So there's a real, well, definitely capacity on that side. But in terms of regional capacity building, I think we need platforms, and I think platforms like the AQMX we heard about earlier this week is a good one there. And then we need to improve horizontal integration, so we need cross-ministerial coordination bodies. I mentioned that earlier. We have to link air quality to climate and public health strategies and debates as well, I would say. And we need integrated emission inventories. They are partly there, but not entirely. Next slide, and this is the last one as well. So this is the new project we are going to start, hopefully in about 2 to 3 months' time. It's called the Southeast Asia Climate and Clean Air Initiative, SICAI. It is funded by the German and Swiss government, and our political partner is ASEAN, and we have specifically been asked to address as well these governance challenges. And we have different implementation levels, regional, sub-regional, and national, and this is exactly, hopefully, then addressing the challenges, but as well the solutions I just presented. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. We have 10 to 15 minutes for discussion. I think I'll open the floor straight away instead of having internal questions first. If you have questions, please raise your hand and identify yourself with name and affiliation if you have, and to whom you want to address the question. Anyone want to open? Anyone in the panel have any questions? Wendy?
Not a question, but maybe like a suggestion for you. With transboundary haze pollution has been one of the major issues that I'm sure you know that it has not been really properly enforced and implemented by ASEAN member states. And now we have 11 member states. And I think with the new Declaration on Environmental Rights, for me, one of the main issue is how to use this declaration for ASEAN's collective commitments, and one of them is on transboundary haze pollution. So I hope in your new project there will be an opportunity where the Human Rights Commission of ASEAN can actually contribute to the discussion, because I think now at least they have, with this declaration, they have a basis to provide support to environmental division or environmental bodies of ASEAN when developing their own work plan using this declaration as a basis. So if there is an opportunity for the Human Rights Commission to contribute to transboundary haze pollution, I think that would be a fantastic opportunity. Thanks.
Yeah, many thanks for that comment. I absolutely agree. I think this declaration has actually helped, or it came at the right time, right? So it should give us a good framework we can work within, and it should as well provide, at least to a certain extent, some commitment from the countries. I think we've seen something similar in Europe and North America. You know, this convention on long-range transboundary air pollution, that really had an immense effect, right, on commitment of countries. And I hope that, you know, this new declaration will help. Personally, I wonder whether there's still space for a declaration as well on air quality management in the region, or air quality. You know, it could be, I mean, probably not now, but I do wonder whether a declaration specifically focusing on air quality in the region would further enhance the country's commitment maybe to it. But yeah, I would be quite keen to work as well with you and with the UN agencies, especially as well on the declaration and what it actually means. You know, how will it be taken up by countries? What can be done to actually make sure that it is being taken up and it is taken seriously? Because, and I think last point, because I think we've all seen that, for example, the ASEAN agreement on transboundary haze pollution has been there for a long time, and nothing really has happened. And there is no feel of ownership. And I do wonder whether the new declaration might change that a little bit for that. Thank you.
I actually think that was can be regarded as a question as well. Maybe Wendy or Georgie, can you say a little bit about what are the future plans for the declaration? How it will be distributed and implemented locally? There's an ongoing process, but maybe you can give a short status update on it, and how it would affect air quality management specifically. I don't know who wanna, Georgie?
Thank you, Christian. So within the declaration, it is actually stipulated in one of the articles that AICHA, the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, is mandated to develop a regional plan of action. So there is already a mechanism within the declaration to support that implementation and uptake stage. I think one of the other key elements, well, AICHA had their meeting a few weeks ago in February, and at that meeting they have agreed on a roadmap for the preparation of the regional plan of action. So that's all going to be happening throughout this year. But another really important development is not only are there discussions about the regional plan of action, there's already conversations happening at the national level amongst some ASEAN member states to develop national action plans to implement the declaration. And I know that that is a conversation that has started in Thailand, for example. So there are plenty of opportunities, and I think this is a common approach to ASEAN regional commitments, that where there is not only the political commitment made within an instrument like a declaration, but where that is complemented by a plan of action, we see real action on the ground, and we do see strides being made. We saw that with marine litter, plastics, for example, but many other areas as well. I don't know, Wendy, if you want to add.
I think one very key step for this declaration and the other declaration, because there are two declarations actually out last year, is promoting it, because I understand that there are not many stakeholders actually know the existence of this declaration. Whilst with the nature on environmental rights, it intersects with so many different sectors, and I think that's one of the areas that IHR may want to focus on first, or in concurrent with developing the RPA, but that's also one of the points or one of the actions that civil society organizations, academics can also support IHR. So then more and more institutions, national, regional, international, knows about this and actually maybe provide support and inputs in the development of the RPA and the National Action Plan. I think some of the national human rights institutions in the region have also expressed interest in implementing it at the national level in various different forms and formats. It not necessarily have to be a national action plan, because the NHRIs do have limited mandates. But I think the appetite is there. But again, the same at the regional level, where human rights it's hard to convene a rights-based discussion about environmental rights. Is also potentially similar at the national level. So I think there should be one institution or one agency at the national level that have a big enough convening power to invite all of the stakeholders and unpack this declaration, what it means for Indonesia, what it means for Thailand, and move from there. And maybe a national action plan, that a wholesale national action plan may be quite ambitious, but we can start with one or two areas that maybe only national governments can provide, not regional institutions like ASEAN. So that's just another point. Thanks.
Thank you. We have a question over here. Come with the microphone.
Hi, I'm Desiree Narvaez. I used to work with UNEP and more recently with UNICEF. And talking about human rights, I recall we have a General Comment 26 by the Committee on the Rights of the Child, where there is really the children's rights in the environment with a focus on climate change. So talking about rights and declarations, and this is not only for the ASEAN but globally, what can you say in the project that you are going to have the German the Swiss funded? Is there, and I couldn't agree more about your horizontal recommendation to have a linkage between public health and air quality and climate sectors. Is there would one output be something about in action plans about having this integration coordination mechanism for the different agencies? And that's one. And the other thing is on the monitoring of environmental hazards vis-a-vis the health aspect. Is there also provision on that? I mean, I'm not familiar with the project, but the project should be useful in terms of its output and recommendations. Does it cover these two things about linkages as well as the data that could be used across sectors? Thank you.
Yes, many thanks for the question. Yes, we will definitely address this. As I said, so we will work on the regional, sub-regional, and local level. On the regional level, we are in very close contact with ASEAN, the Secretariat, and we have been asked specifically already, and they've been quite open about it, that they are not happy with the let's say, communication between different ASEAN strands or ASEAN working groups as well, right? For example, the climate change working group and the environment working group not really working together. And we've been asked if we were to set up now the project that we should make sure that we invite different working group members to our workshops, for example. So there should be definitely some exchange going on between different sectors on that level. On the national level, again, we have our political partners so we are mainly focusing the project on Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. and Vietnam to a certain extent. Myanmar, unfortunately, we are not officially allowed to work at the moment, but we should be able to include them from time to time through our political partner. So basically, those 5 countries then, and we have political partners in those 3 main countries, and we will make sure that together with these partners, and they've told us already, that whatever we, for example, we pilot in the region, because there will be pilot projects as well looking into action on air quality management, that this will be actually, it should be scalable, everything, and that there will be a good information flow as well between, so both horizontally and vertically. For example, in Thailand, our political partner is the Pollution Control Department. They have as well, in each province, they have a representative, and then these representatives, there's as well the entire extension service landscape, so that whatever we do is really reaching the people as well, and reaching different levels of government, so that hopefully in the end, all this information can be used, for example, to inform Thailand's new clean air, clean air bill, exactly, it's called clean air bill, and there should be alignment then between action and policy, and between policies on different levels.
No, I just wanted to perhaps just to highlight again, don't forget the health sector.
Yeah.
And especially when we're talking about vulnerable populations like children. I mean, this is it's imperative really, given all the vulnerability of children and other vulnerable populations, is to highlight and really engage the health sector, because I know that it's, environment and health are really siloed, and we want them to work together, especially in important projects like this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are nearing the end. Thank you so much for an excellent panel, very insightful presentations, and we will end with some final words from UNEP.
Thank you so much, Christian. Very quick, very briefly, just to say a big thank you to all of the panelists and our moderator for joining today, for all of the insightful contributions. For me, one of the takeaways is that whether we're talking about sort of the legislative foundations, whether we're talking about the state obligations to human rights laws, whether we're talking about the national interventions that are being taken, or whether we're talking about this whole idea of multi-level governance, that through all of this, the strands are that there is complexity in delivering clean air for all, but there are foundations of the human right to clean air, and if we continue to ensure that that is centered, that we use the science, that we seek to embed institutional cooperation mandates, that hopefully we can make significant strides. And so I guess the key takeaway from the session is that good air quality governance is inseparable from the protection of human rights, and we really do need to ensure that that is very clear. Of course, we have the global recognition of the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, and most recently, regionally, we have the recognition through the 2025 ASEAN Declaration. But these do provide us a framework to move forward and look at how we can support the commitments and the actions that are being taken by ASEAN member states, but also by member states across the broader region as well, to ensure that communities do have access to clean air. So just once again, thank you very much for the participation, for the dedication, and the last panel session of the Better Air Quality Conference. So please enjoy the final plenary.